the culture told me that's not what women's supposed to do. And that's why my husband was like, but if you have a gift, that's your gift. Work on that rather say what the society or what culture expecting you to do.
Welcome to episode number 7 of the 100 Successful Women, a Conversation to Inspire series. After a week off from the channel, we are now back in full swing again with another lovely woman, Rebecca Dinoia, with her success stories. Rebecca is the founder of an e-commerce business, Soap de Villa, specializing in natural handmade goat milk soap. Aside from owning her own business, Rebecca also serving the local community as a business advisor, as well as a leader in the women's group. Throughout her entrepreneurship journey, Rebecca was recognized for her leadership in various fields. She recently won the Emerging Leader Award 2022 by Women with Altitude. The success we see in Rebecca's today is a result of her overcoming her challenges and obstacles as a PTSD survivor. In today's conversation, she's going to share with us her stories on tips in relation to the traumas and how to take small steps to become who she is today. Let's all have a listen to her stories coming up next. Hey, Rebecca, thank you so much for jumping on here, even though you are super busy. I know that.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate you for saying yes to me. And then, for those of you who haven't known Rebecca, I actually know Rebecca from one of the networking events. She's the founder of Soap de Villa, an e-commerce business selling Australian-made natural homemade goat milk soap and other skincare products as well. So before I go into longer conversation, maybe just let Rebecca herself to introduce a little bit about herself.
Okay. So like you mentioned, I started my own e-commerce business, Soap de Villa, in 2013. I'm a mom of 3 adult children. My eldest son is married, so I also have a daughter-in-law. So my husband and I will be married for about 29 years, over nearly 30 years. So besides that, I also work as a business advisor for a government-funded program that will help a general public either to start their own business or improve their business.
Wow, that's amazing. You doesn't look like you have 3 older kids already.
I married quite early, actually.
Wow, that's so lucky, so blessed when you are still very young and they're all grown up now.
I suppose I'm kind of at the stage now where I do have plenty of time. I can actually doing other things. So, so besides my own business, I do business advising. I mean, recently I also just taking over the role to actually look after a local female business networking group. But I suppose, if my children still are babies, that's probably going to be quite hard to do that.
That's wonderful. And I also know that Rebecca recently won the Women with Altitude Emerging Leader Award 2022 as well. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
So when you started Soap de Villa, what is your inspiration for starting this business?
So what happened is I always have very bad skin. So ever since I was young, I'm heavily allergic to things I eat, things I touch. So I found it was really hard to actually, to grab a product. I mean, I couldn't just go to supermarket to say, let's grab any soap or, a body, like body cream, and then I can just put on my body, because I know if I use the wrong product, I'm most likely going to have a hives. I'm going to have all the breakout. And I will be scratching really bad, which I have done in the past, where you just can't sleep because you just constantly scratching your back. Sometimes in the early morning, I find, when I wake up, I found the back of my shirt, I will actually have blood on it, because in the middle of the night I will just keep scratching. that really affects my the quality of the sleep. So that's actually one of the reasons I thought, when I first actually tried on the goat's milk, I thought this is actually make quite a lot of difference, because I didn't realize that what you use is, in particularly the soap, can make quite a lot of difference to your skin. So this was the reason why I started.
So the goat milk products that you are using, so that's currently created by yourself?
So we have staff to make it for us as well.
Oh wow, that's amazing, because I know that, like, is that kind of like eczema you were saying?
So I do have eczema. When I was younger, eventually some people do grow out of it. However, as the time goes by, like say for example, recently at Christmas, I went out to Paul Macquarie to see my mother, which is about 4.5 hours north up, further than Sydney. And what I didn't expect I didn't expect the weather there was actually much more humid than Sydney. Okay. In fact, it was feeling like back to the Asian country, it's really humid. And after a couple of days, I would start to scratch. I had the lumps, I had hives on my arms, on my legs. That's when I realized, because of the weather, okay, it brought out the eczema. So I did have it when I was younger, but obviously, I learned how to manage it. But in this case, because of the the weather difference, unfortunately, and you brought out again.
I can imagine that's definitely not a good feeling with all the itchiness. Because I have mild eczema when I was younger as well. So I definitely hear you when you say scratching. I wasn't that bad, but then even a little bit of itchiness, it's so irritating already.
Yeah.
And I really love that you actually make your own products so that it help yourself. And I believe that your product is going to help a lot more kids or adults out there as well. So what was your journey prior to starting your own business?
Okay, so before I start on business, I was working as energy assessor for both federal government and state government program. So my job at that time was to teach the general public how to understand your electricity bill, as well as, we'll give them advice based on the setting of the house, as well as how they use some of the appliances, and give them some advice how to cut down on their electricity usage. So I was doing that for about more than 5 years. And before that, I was actually staying home mom. So I stayed home for about 10 years while my children were still young. I think it's only when my youngest one was about 10 or 11 years old, that's when I actually start to go out to work again.
Wow, you have been staying home for 10 years before you go back to the workforce again.
Yes.
So how was it feeling when you are shifting from a working mom, the stay-at-home mom, to going back to the outside world to work?
Was actually part of the reason at that time, because my husband had his construction business before, then he injured his back. So part of the reason, because then I find myself that I had to go out to work, because otherwise we have no income. Then I had to admit, after staying home for 10 years, it was quite scared, because before, when my children come along, I was working for the bank. But even that, you kind of start wondering, there's a 10-year gap. You start wondering, can you still go back? What kind of job can you get? How's everyone going to see you as a working mom? And also at the same time, I was actually concerned, because I had 3 children. I'm thinking at that time, how I'm supposed to manage to come back to the housework, cleaning, and also cooking. I have 3 boys, they're hungry. So I'm thinking, is that going to enough time? Is that going to be enough money? Those kind of things. So time management was definitely an issue. And the second one, definitely, it was that, whether my past experience was still good enough, and whether, what kind of job were able to get.
Wow, that's so brave of you to challenge yourself to go out to the world where it is a bit different than probably like 10 years ago. So how did you manage that? Because of the things that you mentioned, time management and then worrying about the kids. How did you overcome during that period of time?
My husband does help because we really had to sit down and kind of, partner together. So sometimes I might go, look, I can't pick up the children. Can you go pick it up? I think at that time, my eldest one, would just start high school, I think, which is not too bad. Then they can walk home. And so we just had to worry about, the youngest one, then we pick them up from school. So yeah, my husband and I we had to take turns to help out with the housework. My husband understand, sometimes the house might not be always particularly clean, or maybe the dinner had to be a little bit late because I might be work, but that's just part of the job, So I suppose the communication with your partner does make a lot of difference, where you either share the load or understand that it's not going to be perfect. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely communication and a supportive husband helped a lot as well. So during that time, were you working, and how did the business come into place? You were saying that you were working, is it right away you think about business, or what was the time frame?
So what happened is, because we were working for the government program and the fundings only had limited amount of time. So by the time at the second program, before he finished, this is what I told my husband. I said, look, we could see at that time, we wasn't sure whether the government at that time was going to put in any more funding towards this program. So I told my husband, I said, let's start with something, maybe we start our own business. And if the program, restart, we can always go back to do a part-time. If not, then, at least we have some cash flow, then we can see from there. So that's why I decided. So about just before the program finished, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to give myself a try. So I took out about $5,000 out of my home loan, and I told my husband, I said, let me try for 1 year. I said, I'll promise I'll put 110% effort to it. After 1 year, if it work, we will continue. If it doesn't work, then I will just treat it as if I went to a uni to learn something, because even if you go to university, you still need to spend some money. So I say to my husband, let me try, give me an opportunity, and let me try, see if it work or not. If it doesn't work, at least I might learn some experience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you probably, the way I hear from you were sharing, I feel that you're someone very calm. And then throughout this journey, I heard what you were sharing, that you face a lot of changes in your life. For instance, whereby your husband probably had a back injury, which caused him who were unable to go back to work. And at that time, you decided to change from someone who is staying at home full time and go back to work. And then when the government having some changes as well, you decided to have your own business. So do you consider yourself someone who is calm and have a very clear mind on your direction?
Not really. I think something you have to learn. I'll be honest with you, even before I started a business, when I went back to work, my husband, after my husband injured his back, I did find a job, but then in one instance, I found myself was assaulted in one of the job site by a client's husband. From there, I was diagnosed as PTSD, and I was under the specialist care for about 2 years. And during that time, I suffered from panic attack. I found myself couldn't make a decision. I found myself sometimes I might be driving, but I will blank out and didn't know what to do. So I had to relearn a lot of things, because before that, I found myself, I was helping my husband looking after the house. We were, we had investment property. To overnight, I found myself, I couldn't even pay a phone bill without actually getting panicking. Okay. So I basically, during that 2 years, I was in a survival mode. It was just kind of making sure the children have food to eat, clean the house. That was it, because I couldn't do anything else. So I suppose I don't consider myself as very calm. I don't think it's such a natural. It was something I had to learn, because I suppose after that, when I started business, it was quite it was a scary journey as well, because I know what happened to me. I didn't know how much pressure I could take on. And most of all, I didn't know what to expect in the business world. So my goal at the time wasn't like, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. My goal when I first started business, or like if I can make sure the business still survive the next day, I'll be really happy. That was my goal. So I suppose in the end of the day, after what I've been through, I kind of looking at it, look, how bad can you go? It's like, I went through really low period of the life. So I thought anything else, to be honest with you, if I can actually, survive on it, everything else probably seems okay. We just had to work on it. So I think that's something I learned, was that actually, you look at the situation, we just kind of go, what, let's see what we can do. We just try to find a solution rather than say panic.
Wow, amazing. That is such a, I would say, touching stories that you just shared there, because from what you just shared, it is something I think very, very powerful. And yeah, it is something that a bit of the challenges and a bit of the things that it actually cause you into panic attack within those 2 years. And look at how you are today, even to be a great leader in your world today. That's such a big transformation that you have there.
Yeah, I can't do it myself. Obviously, I have a lot of support. So my husband definitely support me a lot. He helped me, he always encouraged me. So while I was suffering from panic attack, he was there to help me out. Like, I'll be honest with you, my health probably during that time looks really, it's not exactly always clean, but my husband didn't say anything. He always just try to make sure. Our priority at the time is to make sure the children are looked after. And then later on, as I start the business, as I start work, my husband always tell me, she said, you can do it, just try your best. When I was looking at when I was under the specialist care, my specialist was really nice as well. So she always encouraged me, which I was still using that at the beginning of the business. She always say to me, she says, just take a step at a time, try a little step. So during that time when I suffered from PTSD, she said to me, she said, every day I just want you to do a little thing, and the next day you do another little thing. So eventually, like, she didn't want me to stay at home. She really want me, just try a little bit every day. Just give yourself a small goal. So that, I suppose, was something the same principle I was using when I was starting the business as well, was that just give myself a small goal every day, just try a little bit. Then by the time after a year, when I look back, that's when I realized, I go, oh, I actually achieved more than I thought, even though I didn't see that every day. But eventually, when you turn around and look at what you have achieved, that's when I go, oh, I actually doing much better than I thought. So yeah, and then also other supporting group. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's not something that you can actually manage to do yourself. I suppose with all the support, and that's definitely possible.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Rebecca. That has been a big shift in you, and then I believe that it's not an easy journey for you to been through those 2 years, but you actually overcome it. That's why it's allow you to share it so openly nowadays.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, even sharing, I suppose something, because it took me about 10 years, I think, to actually able to openly talk about it. Because I think the culture, the background, we've been brought up, especially Asian culture, is kind of thinking mental health is not something you want to talk about. Everyone kind of go, if you're strong, you can put up with that. Or sometimes we just sweep under the carpet. We don't want to talk about it. But one thing I learned, because I'm glad, which I think pretty blessed, that I was diagnosed early Even the specialist were telling me, she says, because you were diagnosed early so that you can recover much quicker. So I think in the end of the day, it's always a good idea to ask for help early, because the quicker you can ask for help, the earlier you can be on the path of recovering.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because with you sharing this and then with your message to those people out there who is so true, that especially our culture, it is not something that people thought that it should be openly shared, and that's why it's causing a lot of suppress, and then people can lead to somewhere else because of this thinking that they should hide it instead of looking for help.
Yeah, because also, the stigma, people's like, and then you worry about what people going to think about me. So there's help out there, but it just like, if we're not go looking for or asking for help, then it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, that's such an important message. Thank you so much for sharing that once again, Rebecca. I really want to acknowledge you for doing that.
Yep.
So you've been through that, like some kind of trauma or PTSD, and with your business, will that be challenges or obstacles for you? It will be like, because you have been through something that's so big, so obstacle and challenges to you probably is not so big nowadays for you, or how do you overcome the challenges nowadays?
Yeah. Nowadays, I learn a bit more. So I always learn, don't make a decision straight away. Anything, if I can I always try to delay to make a decision as much as possible. So if somebody say, oh, we need this right now, I will say, look, can you give me some time? Even give me 24 hours, because that will buy me time to either search for some more information, or actually get some advice from somebody else, or actually able to sit down, really think back, gather all the information I have, received, and then actually think back what would be the best way to go ahead. I think that's always better to actually slow down rather say just go, let's just do it. So I think it is quite important. I mean, at the beginning of the business, I had to admit, just like everyone else, we'll suffer from like, we don't know what to do, where to go, what's happening, where's the money comes in, where can I find the customer? And I think because the money is short, we really need to be really careful, not just listen to everyone else. I mean, they all mean good, they all mean well, but I think at the end of the day, it is your business. You will need to sit down, really think about, it's like we're just like our children. We're responsible for how our children grow up. So we really need to sit down and go, whatever I'm going to make a decision, is that, what do you call it? Is that, do I actually thought about it? Or is that, so don't make a decision just out of how you feel, but actually do some research first.
Okay, make rational decision, and instead of just jumping in and decide.
Yeah.
So that's a very great one. So I did say that you've been through the business, and at the same time you were working as the business advisor. So you have been coaching or advise on a lot of business in our community for a while now. So what are the most common challenges for business owner?
So that would depend on the stage of the business. For a startup, it's always cash flow. Okay, so always talking about the customer, where to find the customer, the cash flow. For existing business, cash flow is still an issue, but recently what we heard a lot is actually the staff shortage. So it's like they just can't find enough staff or a quality staff that are able to do the job.
So that depends on what stages are in for business. So aside from the money issue or the capital for the startup, any others like challenges that they're facing?
The challenge, I would say probably, if you ask me, I would say probably it can be challenge, it can be mistakes. Probably I would say either the pricing or actually any other ones actually, that if you think that you're going to sell, market to everybody, I think that is that is a mistake, because not everyone are your customer. And other ones are definitely the pricing. Sometimes the client might think they need more customer. In reality, it's probably they didn't charge enough. So therefore, it doesn't, like, either they are not making profit or not enough profit. So that make them think, oh, maybe if I just have more customer, that will solve the issue. But in reality, is that you need to actually go by fixing your pricing issue first, because otherwise you can have 10 times or 100 times a customer, but if you're not making profit at all, you still have the exact same issue.
Yeah, definitely, because some people, they probably purposely mark the price down and get lots of customer, but then it's not actually cover their cost. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good piece of advice for all the business stuff out there. So, and going back to your sharing earlier, as a woman, as a mom, first of all, I wanted to say you're such an amazing woman. You have such an inspiring stories. So at the time you were starting the business, at the same time having your children. So I know that you got your husband supporting you, and what other things that you can advise to all the women out there, or all the moms out there who are thinking to start something as well?
I would say probably I find out what are you good at and make sure you actually do good on that. Because I think one of the things I constantly see when I go to other networking groups is that as a female, we do tend to actually compare ourselves with other women. Okay. So sometimes we kind of look, oh, if she can actually grow her business to 100-fold, how come I can't do it? But then you have to understand that we're in a different circumstance. Sometimes I see clients like, other women that they actually just had a baby. They're looking after newborn, but they want to, and then they want like question themselves, how come they couldn't put in 24 hours in a day? When reality tells you that's not possible. So I think that comparisons definitely, I would say to other women, don't compare yourself with others. The business is a journey. It's not a sprint. Okay. It is not about who start the fastest. It is about who can still stay in the end. Okay. So don't compare yourself, because everyone's different. And the second thing is probably to find out what you're good at and do very good the job. And you will find when you continue to do that, you feel comfortable, and other people will start to see that your confidence, and you will start to see opportunity comes because you're doing a pretty good job at the parts that you are really good at.
Wow, that's such an important message for all the women out there. I agree with you. Sometimes we tend to compare ourselves with others, and the more we compare, and the more lack that we see, and then that probably ended up staying at where we are and not doing anything. I love that message. Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. And then also you were saying that with the mom that have the time, that is like probably we have to understand that everyone have different commitment, they have different family situation. One thing you mentioned about time management. Do you have a tips on how to manage time then?
For me with the business, usually, I'm kind of person, I like to see what happens. So when I will have a calendar, so I usually actually record whatever I already know, especially like before, like with the soul develop, we usually do, like before lockdown, we used to do a lot of the face-to-face event, and some of the events are reoccurring. So at the beginning of every year, I will already actually get a brand new calendar. I'll put everything down already. Okay. And usually depends on the size of the event. I will already like say about anywhere from a month for about a couple of weeks before I will start to plan, just to make sure everything is okay. I'll start to plan what I will need to do with the event. With every day, I usually like to write it down the list. I like to see, like at beginning of the day, I'll put down the list what I need to do, and I cross there one by one. So I usually try to see with the list which one is more urgent, which one's important. So I will try to do the urgent one first. If there's no urgent one, but other list, other item can wait, but I will try to see which one's the most important. I will try to do them first. So some people do electronically, but personally, I found myself, I like to see it in person. So on my desk, I have a lot of paper because I usually scrapping, I write a lot of things down, once it finishes, I throw it in the bin. But yeah, I usually like to see it, but once it cross out and whatever I haven't complete, I will bring it to the next day's list, just so that I can remind myself this is what I need to do. But being said that, obviously, yeah, I'll be honest with you, I used to be like a workaholic. My husband actually make a comment that he said he never know I could be such a workaholic until I actually start a business. So when I first started a business, I was working anywhere from 13 to 15 hours a day for at least about 2 years. And I thought that was just normal. I'll be honest with you. I just thought, well, if we need to push the business, that's what we need to do. Then my husband had to push me. So now I had to learn. Even I think before the lockdown, I had to learn. My husband forced me. I would actually that every morning we would sit down, have a cup of tea and coffee for about half an hour. That will also mean that on my schedule, when I see the client, I had to purposely put in half an hour later. So instead start 9 o'clock, or start 9:30. So that gave me some time to actually kind of settle down, we have a cup of tea, just have a chat before I start. The moment when I actually go out of the house, or when I just sit in front of the computer, I would just be, nonstop. So that's one of the things my husband actually forced me to do, I suppose, because he was saying like, look, you still need to schedule time to actually have some time to, what do you call it, wind down, calm down. I know that at the beginning of the day, he said, but just something to help you to settle down on your spirit before you start. So that's one thing I will have to do as well.
Well done to your husband for tuning, helping you with that, because like you say, it is very important for you to connect with your own self and also with your family, instead of spending all the time on work only. That's a very great awareness that you're having there.
Yeah, I think sometimes we had to take a step to actually make. I mean, because that was up because I had a health scare a few years ago. After that, my husband said, "Look, that's enough. You really need to learn to look after yourself." So even though at the beginning I didn't like it, because like I said, I was really workaholic. But then eventually, now you get used to it, But at the beginning, you kind of feel like, oh, what a waste of time for half an hour. But I'll be honest with you, I mean, that is for your personal mental health good as well. Because, I mean, I was just working, and I was telling my husband, yeah, just wait until Easter. After that will be fine. And then Easter come, I would say, wait until in the middle of the year. And then after you say, wait until Christmas. And this will just keep going, to the point that, until something happened, then you kind of go, we can't keep doing that. Our body they are not designed to do that. Our body actually, I should say, our body has an amazing way to protect itself. So when you actually not looking after that, it will show in different way. So I suppose whether I like it or not, will somehow each of us will be forced. Maybe we'll have to make some kind of adjustment, because basically your body is telling you this is not healthy. This is just not good. So you need to do something about it.
Yeah, that's true. It's great story that you're sharing there, Rebecca, because people tend to wait until something happens, then it signal them or give them the warning message to stop doing something. And yeah, that's a great story, and very important for people out there to remind themselves to look after themselves, despite that they have to work really hard, but then health and mental health is basically everything in life. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rebecca. I'm very mindful of the time as well. I know that you're super busy. And another question that I want to quickly ask you is that with the PTSD that you mentioned, with the panic attack that you mentioned, do you have another tips? Because you mentioned about to slow down a bit. Is there any other tips to handle stress?
I mean, now I had to learn to, I had to look at my schedule. Like I say, I suppose at the end of the day, you really had to force yourself to do quite a lot of things differently than your life. Like I mentioned, I used to be like workaholic. Okay. Um, I think I even write an article once. I mentioned to I was given, I think, about $350 voucher. Okay, the Westfield voucher. And my husband was saying to me, he said, take a day off, go in the shopping, do whatever you want, you know. And that turned out to be the most exclusive day of my life, because here I am sitting in the middle of Westfield, you know. My mind wasn't thinking about how I'm going to spend that $350. My mind basically was going to go, oh, if I'm back at the office now, how many email I could answer, how much money I could make. I was sitting there thinking, why am I here? You know, and my husband ran me out and said, what did you do to yourself? I'm like, I still got that $350. I haven't spent a cent, you know. So that was my mentality that time, because I'm so focused on the business. I'm thinking, what a waste of time. I'm just saying I could go back to the office. Like I mentioned, you know, so sometimes I think with the stress, a lot of times I think we bring it on ourselves. I think we think, oh, because at that time you think the business won't work without me. But I suppose one thing good about the lockdown, I know everyone don't like the lockdown, is that I realized when the lockdown happened, I kind of go, wait, everyone is around me, they're still surviving, you know, even though the whole world stopped. Everyone it's not like they, you know, they can't survive. All of a sudden I realized that I can take a time off for myself. You know, I can actually take a break. I didn't have to work that hard. So with the stress, in my case, I was putting on the stress myself, which mentally I had to learn. I had to learn to de-stress. I had to learn to take it easy. I had to learn to, like I mentioned before, you know, to start the day a bit later, rather say just keep bang, 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 keep going. I suppose in the end of the day, you really need to think about what's more important to you. You know, and start with something small. It doesn't have to be a dramatic. Even that means, you know, maybe take, you know, get a half hour a bit earlier, or just go out to, say, go for a walk for 30 minutes or something. But we really need to do something for ourselves, to look after ourselves, because at the end of the day, that's one thing I learned when I had a health scare, when I was sitting. Because in 2018, I was being told that there's a possibility I might have a breast cancer. Okay, so I was actually in and out of the hospital for a month. But thank God, you know, my friend, they were praying for me, the people in church praying for me. After a month, the result came out, that was clear. I didn't have anything. But it gave me an opportunity to really sit down and think about, because during that month, I was sitting there thinking, what kind of thing I'm going to miss it? Because I'm thinking I could miss my son's wedding, I could miss our Christmas, all the things I've been missing. That's when I realized I kind of go, I can't continue where it is. So I make a decision, you know, I say, if I'm being healed, I'll have to do the life differently. So like I say, you know, it's uncomfortable, especially with the stress, you know, but a lot of times I think it is a personal choice. We have to do something, even just some small little things, you know, but it will make a lot of difference to your health.
I love that. That's so true. Doing a little bit of change every single day. And like you say, you didn't even realize how much changes that you have been going through just by doing a little bit a day, each day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. So, you have been given a lot of great advice to all the women, all the listeners out there. Before we wrap our conversation today, is there any last piece of advice that you want to give to all the women out there?
Yeah, I would actually, the last piece of advice probably come from something about 6 months into when I started business. I found myself working full time, and I was constantly arguing with my husband all the time. Because what happened is the way I've been brought up was kind of, I thought business is a main thing. Women's supposed to just be a supporting role. Okay. So I would tell my husband, this is what you need to do. But my husband's idea as supporting is different. So we found ourselves constantly arguing until one day I said to him, I said, look, this is enough. We need to sit down, have a proper talk, because I can't see myself. I start to question myself, why even doing business? You know, if we just keep going arguing that. Then I told my husband, what happened. This is what mentally what I was thinking. Then my husband says something really affects, and which I think is probably also good for a lot of women out there. My husband turned around and said to me, he says, why can't we actually work according to the gift and the talent that God given to us, each of us, rather say what the society expect us to do?
Wow.
Okay. So that was actually quite shocked, because when he said that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And because he said to me, he said, you are good at this. At that time, he said, you're good at networking. Go and network. And my answer at that time is, but the culture told me that's not what women's supposed to do. And that's why my husband was like, but if you have a gift, that's your gift. Work on that. Rather say what the society or what culture expecting you to do. So that, I suppose that's one final piece of advice I will give the women out there is, you do have a given talent. Each of us, God has given a complete, your gift and your talent is different than mine. So work on that, why don't you work on that rather say what the society are expecting you to add or to do.
That's such a wisdom and such a wise piece of advice. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much to you, Rebecca, and thanks to your husband as well for giving you that advice. And now all the women out there have this piece of advice, a great reminder. Thank you so much to you, Rebecca, for your time. So for those of the women out there, if they wanted to look for you, how can they find you online?
So if you want to looking for our the purchase of products, so our website is www.sodevelop.com.au. So if you want to get some business advice,
Rebecca, so yeah, you were breaking up a little bit, but then I will definitely share your social media handle in the channel or under the video description later, so that they can find you as well.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much once again, Rebecca, for your time with us, and I really appreciate that your message is truly inspiring to many women out there. And then I really appreciate you, and hopefully next time you can come on here to share with us your golden nuggets and your great advice again.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, see ya.